How do you do? I'm Dustaroo, and I want to talk to you about something that's been weighing on my mind since the start of the Blood Moon event. Now that it's over, I think it's time to finally talk all about
Gas. The gas will start flowing.
With the introduction of the 2025 Blood Moon event, we got 3 new things added in the limited time game mode: blood pumps, gas cans, and blood generators. Those blood pumps were new interactables scattered around the map where survivors could choose to fill a gas can with said blood. That blood can be used to quickly progress blood generators instead of the regular action of slowly repairing a generator as a survivor. It transformed the standing in one place, holding a single button while you look at your second monitor or phone, into a collect from one location and deliver to another to win the match playstyle. Not for all the generators, but some of them. This was something entirely different from anything else we've seen in any limited time game mode. A fundamental change to the gameplay formula of a survivor's win condition. A second win condition. While all other new game modes add different variables to how Dead by Daylight is played on both sides, this usually in the form of a secondary objective that gives you A, extra points, B, an item, or C, a status effect, and D, maybe even all of the above. Things that can change a chase or a pace of a match. But with this event, they changed something that is rarely ever touched: powering the exit gates, changing what survivors need to do to win. A proper secondary objective that actually progresses the game on the survivor side at least. So what was the result of this massive update to a core mechanic of the game? It was an absolute failure. This game mode across the board has been torn apart from survivor and killer players alike. Survivors hate it for the way it makes killers play, way more tunnel heavy, way more camp focused. Restrictions to their perks, and how particular killer powers make blood generators appear to be the thing of nightmares. The killer side hating it for how many of their best and most important killer perks in the killer repertoire are completely wasted if used in this mode, and how that causes generators to just fly by. The jokes about gens being done during the loading screen feeling a little more real during this Blood Moon event than any other time in this game's history. The only reason this mode didn't die within the first week was that sweet blood point incentive. It proves how much punishment players are willing to take to collectively boost up the community. A shining light in the sea of thick, dark red the Blood Moon has brought us. So how am I, as a player, looking at this catastrophe of a game mode and thinking, yeah, let's add that to actual Dead by Daylight? I see this idea as a diamond in the rough. Jagged, misshapen, an ugly piece of rock that seems to cut anyone who tries to hold it. I see the potential underneath, and with some cutting and reforming, we can make ourselves a beautiful ring that we've been waiting on in Dead by Daylight for so long. So come with me and I'll show you why we should marry ourselves to the idea of fuel pumps coming to the main mode of Dead by Daylight. So let's get the most obvious thing out of the way. Blood generators, I don't like them, I don't want them, and for all intents and purposes, they are removed from the game, never appearing to see the light ever again, locked away in the catacombs of time to be forgotten and despised.
At least now maybe
Get the hell out of here!
But I've got nowhere to go!
Get out! Get out!
They will have nothing to do with fuel pumps and my idea forever. Divorce them entirely and put a restraining order on them. They no longer exist to me, and they shouldn't exist to you either. What I think they should add is a singular fuel pump and gas cans to every single match of Dead by Daylight moving forward. But how they work and are interacted with will be a lot different. Like cosmetically, it will no longer be blood, but instead black and iridescently infused fuel. It looks like oil, but with a sparkly shine to it, making it easier to identify in many ways and making a little bit more sense for how they're going to be used moving forward. This fuel pump will be turned into a completely optional but viable secondary objective. that if survivors want to, or feel they need to, can be used to progress any generator found around the map. They will function in a way to not allow for early game gen rushing, but will help close out a match, especially ones with very hard to break 3 gens, or just matches that shift completely to a stalled out, stealthy tug of war. Randomly around the map, survivors can come across a fuel pump. It is broken down and completely drained of fuel. The survivor, in a short animation, can repair this fuel pump, turning it on and allowing the fuel to slowly build up and be used to fill a gas can later. There is only one of these fuel pumps in every match of Dead by Daylight. To be able to return and make use of these now fuel-filled pumps, the survivors must also be in possession of a gas can. There are 4 of these gas cans scattered all over the map that survivors can pick up as a limited time item and bring them back to the fuel pump to be filled. Gas cans on the ground can be seen by all survivors within 6 meters of distance. They can be dropped whether empty or full at any time and cannot be destroyed by the killer, but can be completely emptied if the killer finds one with gas in it and stomps it. Gas cans that have fuel in them will slowly empty fuel onto the ground if they are dropped by survivors, or if any survivor runs with them at any point. The fuel will drain a lot quicker from the gas can than it does in the Blood Moon event. I'm thinking like twice as fast, so it's best if survivors walk as much as possible if they are transporting any fuel. Survivors should be wary though, as even if they have repaired a fuel pump, by the time they come back to it, it could very well be inactive again. For the killer, just like with generators, the fuel pump will have its aura highlighted the entire match, allowing the killer to have the needed information that if survivors are not on generators, they're likely around that fuel pump, and now the killer will know where that is. Also, just like generators, killers can damage the fuel pump at any time, kicking it and causing the fuel to slowly drain out until it's completely empty. Survivors can stop this regression the same way they do with generators, repairing it for a couple seconds until they pass that regression indicator, causing fuel to start recharging and allowing survivors to fill up their gas can. But unlike generators, no matter how much the killer kicks a fuel pump, it will never be blocked. Killers can kick the fuel pump 100 times if they want to, and it will never block for them. A cool addition to make these fuel pumps more integral to every match would be how perks and action speed increases and decreases would also affect them as well. Killer perks like Nowhere to Hide or Dragon's Grip could also work on a fuel pump the same way they do on generators. Other perks that could slow down survivors' action speeds or repair speeds would also work for fuel pumps. Let's say you have 2 tokens of Dying Light. Well, now the survivors will repair the pump and fuel up from it 6% slower. Of course, some perks would not be able to work with fuel pumps and would have their perk descriptions rewritten accordingly. Perks like Pop Goes the Weasel would only affect generators because if it didn't, it would force that killer to ignore a pump or accidentally waste that single-use perk. But for the most part, perks that would work on a generator would also work on a fuel pump. The final part about how generator fuel works is simply that any generator can be fueled up from a gas can. No special generators required. You have fuel, use it to gas up a generator to increase overall progression pretty fast. I think nailing down a number exactly right now doesn't work without testing, but I think a fair amount of progression from a single full gas can would be something like 1/3 of the generator's progress. Something like 30-33%. And also to be clear, the fuel pump can only hold 1 gas can's worth of gas at any given time, meaning there'll never be more than 1 full gas can in a match at any time, unless survivors stand around for several minutes holding that gas, then maybe. But if you're letting that happen, I don't think the killer's doing a very good job of pressuring the map at all. And yes, refueling would count as repair speed, so perks like Thanatophobia would increase the total amount of time it takes to fuel a generator using a gas can. So now you know how it would work, you're probably asking, what's the point? Wouldn't this make survivors OP? I play both sides pretty regularly, so I understand how even a small, subtle change to core mechanics can make an experience for the other side dramatically worse. And now bring in such a large change such as this, and it probably has some people scared, and other people thinking, wow, this would make it so easy for me to play Survivor. But I'm pretty confident in saying I don't think it would be. It wouldn't be OP, that is. And funny enough, it could make a lot of Dead by Daylight's gameplay more enjoyable, particularly against certain killers. The biggest reason this would be a good addition to the game is the most simple. It just makes the average match of Dead by Daylight on a whole a little bit more interesting, without fundamentally changing the successfully simple formula Dead by Daylight was built on. It's an evolution of the game, not a fundamental change to how it's played, just like the Endgame Collapse's introduction a few years ago. It could cause some alleviation for some of the exploitable aspects of the current game and giving players more options and depth to every match. Instead of sitting on generators while your fellow survivors are being chased, you can channel a lost aspect of Dead by Daylight. As the years went on, sneaking became less valuable. Urban evasion was once upon a time a useful perk. There were only like 50 perks total in the game, so it's not hard when there's that little options, but still. Avoiding chase as much as possible was one of the strongest tactics in early Dead by Daylight. But as time went on, chase extending perks and chase ending powers became the standard and the expectation. With this, we could reintroduce a lost art form in a somewhat meaningful way. This gives survivors new routes to play with that style while still actually helping the team instead of being that Meg hiding in the corner. But at the same time, it could just be completely ignored. You can sneak around the map, getting to the last generator while attempting to avoid detection, trying not to spill any fuel to show the killer your location or plan. Or you can just do the generator and keep the pace up constantly. Both have their strengths and both would have their risks, but you, as the player, could choose whatever path you feel would work best for this situation or this killer. You're given an actual choice, not the illusion of it. How I think it helps the game, besides just adding a little more flavor to generators in general, is I think it could help alleviate some of the more problematic killers, at least when it comes to late game. I don't mean this like as a nerf to those killers, but giving actual fun gameplay during those otherwise boring moments that they would offer. The best example at the top of my head is the Singularity. This is a killer that I rightly predicted would become a menace after a long enough time, where players that only have a mild interest in the character are for the most part filtered out now. And the only ones left are the Singularity mains and the true Hux enjoyers. People who really know how to use this toolkit to its full potential, and I will say a lot of the time results in a very stale endgame, where all the momentum for the match can be brought to a standstill as the Singularity has built his web and has those 3 final generators on lockdown. The slightest wrong move dooms your team as survivors, so it boils down to a lot of back and forth from EMP to generator to EMP to generator, getting enough progression to hopefully stop the generator from regressing. Until inevitably you get that generator to a point where it can't be regressed any longer, or the Singularity has finally committed to a chase, giving you an opening to start repairing. I don't think this makes Singularity busted or OP, but it does suck the thrill out of a match like a vacuum of space does oxygen. While playing against the Singularity in some situations can result in unique and fun experiences, at least to me, this is an undeniable low point of playing as and against the killer. But with the addition of the fuel pump, that slow and drawn out gameplay suddenly has a new active element to it, some spice added to the soup. Now, the Singularity has a choice to make. The survivor has a choice to make. Unlike before where, just place all your biopods on every single side of a generator and all nearby EMPs, you're good to go. Because if you didn't, you're just asking to lose. Like, not being cheeky or clever, but driven to lose for no real reason. Now you can still do that, no problem. Or you could also keep patrol of the fuel pump too, maybe even placing biopods on the path from the fuel pump to a generator, making the killer puzzle out what they think the best course of action is. Will the survivors try and force a fuel rush? Or are they just going to raw dog generators? Who knows, but it's up to you as the killer to decide what you think they're planning, and thus plan accordingly. This would also give a survivor a choice of what they want to do. They can also just play the same, just force down a generator and run when needed, or they can try and play a sneaky gas can playstyle, sneaking from rock to rock, not trying to spill any oil or be caught. Since they can only transport so much fuel at one time, and it will take time for the fuel pump to refill before they can attempt it again, finding that gas can survivor becomes a small game in its own right. Get the gas can, and the survivors are back to square one, putting the killer in a comfortable spot. Now they can choose to hyper suppress the fuel pump, to never let it refill, or keep a harder patrol of the generators. Again, their call, giving both sides more choices and more compelling moments during a match, even the drawn out parts. All with this slight addition, what before was tedious is a little more entertaining. What feels like a slog is a different pace and style of gameplay you didn't have much earlier in the match. We don't need to nerf any killer to play worse, make them feel more janky to play, but retroactively, this would make some specific situations and killers a little bit more enjoyable to face, and adding a little bit more action on the killer side. Once again, nothing is taken away, but the options are given. The survivor still needs to get to a generator to slowly fill it. It's just now that that dead space of a survivor or area being locked down has a risk to it. One to be played around, but still one nonetheless. I used Singularity as an example, but I think many killers would serve to be more enjoyed by the player base as a whole with this slight addition. It makes what worked about Dead by Daylight the same as it ever was, but enriches it. And I know it's kind of daunting adding something new to a familiar formula, something that limits or alters what could feel like muscle memory after a certain point, maybe even feeling like you have less power in what you'll be able to do, but I'm willing to bet. Actually, no, I don't need to bet. I was there. That was some of my feelings, and I know other people's feelings when the endgame collapse came to Dead by Daylight a couple years ago. Survivors now had a ticking clock that a killer could activate whenever they wanted. You could not use as much time as you wanted to get a full team heal to go get a save across the map. You have to act. You have to act now. And yes, there is a greater chance of someone dying than there was before Endgame Collapse was added. Getting caught before you get to the exit gate and dying by a timer, rather than the pure skill of a killer. And yet, the Endgame Collapse was the greatest update that Dead by Daylight ever had. So that was just a few thoughts I had on how we could introduce fuel pumps and why we should introduce fuel pumps into the actual base game of Dead by Daylight. Many people have been asking for a secondary objective for many years. Nobody could truly visualize what would make a good secondary objective. It was more so players knowing they wanted something more, but they didn't know how to go about it. I was the same way. I had ideas. I had nothing that would feel like it would be natural for how Dead by Daylight played. And then the Blood Moon event happened, and I saw those gas cans, and I saw those fuel pumps. I saw the secondary objective that we had been asking for. Running and that blood spilling out of the fuel can, slowly draining, making me think maybe I should walk instead of run everywhere, reminded me of old Dead by Daylight. And that's why I really feel passionately that now is the time. Whoever came up with this idea at Behavior did a good job. Not a great job, because it was, you saw it. But still, they have it now. So what do you think? Do you like the idea of a fuel pump being added to Dead by Daylight? Do you like my idea, or do you have another way that you would do it that you think would be a better idea than what I came up with? Please let me know down in the comments. Maybe we can have a discussion about it down there. I'm in this game for the long haul. It's been my game for a long time, and I'm looking for every way that I can improve it with new stuff, and this feels like it's right there. But anyways, I don't want to go on a rant again. So thank you all for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please hit that like and maybe even subscribe. My name's Dustaroo, and I will see you all real soon. Bye-bye.